Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Susie Spirlock. You can find Susie on Instagram at dr.susie.squats. Susie Squats. She was an awesome guest to have on the podcast. We talked about her journey from posting fitness tips and booty workouts on social media to becoming someone who is very information and optimistic based when it comes to putting out content. She likes to bust myths that are ultimately more optimistic and helpful for people, especially women, when it comes to training and managing health and rehab. Had a really fun time talking with Susie. It's a great conversation. I think a lot of people can benefit from listening to it. If you're a woman interested in strength, training, rehab, navigating health, I think it's really beneficial. I really appreciate Susie coming on. You can find her on Instagram at dr.susiesquats. I'll also post her website and her YouTube in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. And if you're struggling with pain or injury and you want help, you can either reach out to Susie or you can check me out at dr.dave.strengthandkindness on Instagram. Love to help you out any way that I can. Please feel free to reach out on Instagram and ask me any questions you have. Thanks so much. Peace. I have the Dr. Susie Squats. I was just telling Susie, like, my wife does not watch my podcast or listen to my podcast at all, but she's actually excited for Susie to come on. She actually likes Susie's content, and I think she likes the Lorax. We can get into the Lorax here shortly. But Susie, I wanted to bring you on for multiple reasons. You have done a really good job of being in like the fitness and health and rehab space while maintaining authenticity, being evidence. I always call it evidence oriented. Like like there's back and forth on some of these things, but I want to know what got you first start. Like, why did you decide to go on social media and when, and what was that about for you?
Yeah, so that has actually, it started off as your typical fitness influencer. Mm-hmm. And if things come to mind when I say that, typical gym fits and a bunch of glute workouts and glute pics, because I started it in undergrad, so it was my senior year of undergrad, and my sister and I were like, hey, let's start an Instagram together. So originally it was Fit Sister Duo, so fun. And then fast forward a year and I was going to PT school and, we fizzled out on posting. I think we had maybe like 10K followers at that time. And, life got busy. I went to PT school. She started life. And so I was like, hey, can I take over the Instagram account, rename it Susie Squats, and then start posting more educational things? Because at that time, my thought process and intention with social switched from let's post gym fits and workouts to the opportunity for me to be able to educate things that I'm learning in PT school, things that I'm learning more about training and lifting can reach far and wide on a platform that could reach literally anyone in the world. So started posting more like educational, more like student PT content throughout PT school, still fitness based. And then once I graduated, I really dialed up the notch and to be like, okay, now let's really get into the more educational pieces. What things do I wish I would have had access to when I started my fitness journey or worked through injuries? And then from there, it just kind of blossomed into my full-time job.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like when I first started posting, like I didn't even really know why I was doing it. I just had seen other people and I like people I looked up to. I read an article a long time ago from Jordan, the barbell medicine Jordan Feigenbaum, and it's like one of the things that people have to understand is like you got to start creating content. And I'm like, I didn't even know what content was. I was like, this is an article, but it's really just you have to start if you want to have a business, if you want to be a practitioner that is like fitness forward, you got to start putting out stuff. And I'm like, oh my god. But the question then follow up to all that is like, how has it evolved for you? Like, what you went from booty workouts and, nothing wrong with that, glute gains, that type of stuff. But, and then even in PT school, like, I think there's an evolution of, we're learning these things about, like, mechanics that are relatively, like, black and white. We're looking at things, honestly from a relatively simplistic way, because frankly, if we were really going biopsychosocial in PT school, everyone would hate it. Because like I look at all my classmates and myself included, is like we just want a straightforward answer. Just gives, and it's like, oh, it depends a little bit, right? And there's a lot of factors. But how have you evolved in your content creation, in the information you're putting out? What's that looked like for you?
It has evolved tenfold, I will say. First from, again, posting booty workouts, transitioning to then being in PT school. And I don't know about you, but when I was in PT school, I thought I was the shit and the coolest thing ever. And I knew so much and can solve anyone's problems. And when you get out into the real world, you quickly realize, oh, the human body is not so mechanistic and biomechanistic as we thought it was. There's a lot more that goes into a pain response and behavior change and psychology and other societal factors that affect someone's pain response in the rehab, but also ability to start and sustain a solid fitness routine throughout the lifespan. So I really went from all the special tests and the cool things we learned in ortho to, hey, if you have shoulder pain, I'm looking at your programming first. Maybe I'll look at your technique, look at global movement patterns, figure out what is sensitive, what is not sensitive, and then start the building blocks from there. Funny enough, I actually just commented on a student physical therapist page the other day because they basically put up a post and it was, hey, here's a 2-minute shoulder flow to run through all of the shoulder special tests. And basically they were like, okay, you can deduce that this could be a slap tear or this could be shoulder impingement. And then I just left a nice little comment. I was like, hey, I know you need to learn this for school to pass your tests and for boards. However, academia is 5, 10, 15 years behind the current evidence. Shoulder impingement is no longer the preferred term. We use subacromial pain syndrome, as well as the shoulder special test specifically for the shoulder joint themselves, not really being that special. And so we really want to look at the functional movements of the person and the programming and the other psychosocial factors combined versus just, here's a 2-minute shoulder flow. You're going to know exactly what to do when you're done with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, again, like we want to, there's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It applies to so many things in life. I mean, so much of how I even treat and how I even work with people is just assess symptoms. And like, if you would have went to school for 2 years and it's like, yeah, and there is a lot of learning that has to go into those, a lot of pattern recognition, but it really boils down to a lot of times, like I'm assessing symptoms. I'm monitoring aggravating and easing factors. I'm trying to bring up the gap between what they know and what I think is going on so that they can maybe just take better. A lot of it is the hard part about being like a PT in the traditional system and still being like a PT who is more like virtual or coaching people, is there's still just a giant disconnect between what people are doing for 10 hours a day. You're all good. And 10 hours or 15 hours a day. And then like the 40 minutes they're working out, right? And then their expectations with how long things take, right? It's really hard. And that's why also like nuanced content doesn't necessarily do what you would love it to do. And that's why relatively fear-mongering or simplistic-oriented content often gets a lot of people on board. Because, frankly, the other thing that physios, chiropractors, physicians love to do is tell people what to do. And that also sucks. Because, like, you got to learn. It's just like training is learning, right? So you have obviously continued to cultivate, like, a passion for what you're doing. But, like, how has like the struggle of building like an account been both hard on you and good for you? Like there's usually pros and cons to this stuff, but like what have been the big takeaways for you?
Yeah, so I mean, like we talked about, originally when I started my account, it was just for fun. Like I had never intended for this to be my full-time job, own a business, have a team of physical therapists, working with people all around the world. This was not my intention. In PT school, I wanted to actually work in inpatient neuro. That was my jam, that was my passion, and then I graduated from school, husband and I got married. He's active duty Air Force, so we had to move to middle of nowhere, Oklahoma in 2020, right after we got married. And we were there for, 4 years almost. But the only option I had for jobs was a rural hospital-based outpatient facility. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to work here, and then when we move, I can do my outpatient neuro. Well, I started working within 4 or 5 months. I was like, oh my God, like, what did I do? Like, is this what I have to do for the rest of my life? Did I make the biggest mistake of my life by going to PT school? Because this is not it. I was miserable. And I also learned a lot as a new grad, being immersed into having to be a super generalist when it comes to so many different diagnoses and symptomologies, because I was in such a rural part of the United States. And then at that time, I don't remember exactly what my page was at. I want to say I was around like 70,000-ish followers, still posting for fun. And my husband literally sat me down and looked at me. He's like, why haven't you monetized this? Why haven't you started a group strength training program, taken the plethora of one-on-one inquiries of, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching? Do you do rehab coaching? And so he was actually one that pushed me into doing that. It started off with my group strength training program. And then I started one-on-one coaching. And as I built up my roster with one-on-one coaching, I decreased my hours in the clinic. And then we moved to Charleston. I took the huge leap to be all remote. And now I have myself and then 3 full-time PTs that work with me. So over the course of starting my business till I am now, there's like a catch-22 when it comes to being remote, because I love it. It has so many benefits. I get to be home with my dogs. I get to leave and go visit my sister, my niece, and my nephew whenever I want. I don't really have to take sick days. I'm just like sick on the couch, maybe working on some things. But the caveat to always being on social is that you're always kind of on all the time. There's always a DM to answer, a comment to answer. And then when you look at the client-facing side of things, there's emails, there's admin, there's so much more work that goes into this remote business owner life than people realize. Yes. And it does come with a lot of struggles too, because in typical physical therapy world or even personal training world, you see your clients, you go home, you don't really have much work to do unless you work somewhere crappy where they don't pay you for documentation time after you go home. And then you kind of just live your life. And people don't really have much access to you. But on socials, people have access to me all the freaking time. Just imagine it is my friend Alyssa Olnick. I don't know if you know her, yeah. Docless Fitness, yeah. Yep. We were just talking the other day of, it's almost like instead of just having your email inbox of people who have access to you, you have your email inbox muddled with your personal text messages, muddled with text messages with acquaintances, and then muddled with comments and DMs from complete strangers who think they know your life, demanding your time and your energy, and or calling you mean names because they can. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are in hell. No, I mean, like there's the pro of it. I mean, obviously your following build up. I mean, at this point, I think you have like 160,000 followers, right? Like, okay, first and foremost, like the one thing I have learned to understand is, in our business, I think people look at that and it's like, okay, but you really don't need that massive of a following to have a business and to do well, depending on how things work are structured, right? But it's hard to grow. You have to be consistent. You have to put out things that are meaningful and valuable. You have to kind of demonstrate some of your personality, right? And that is like pressure, right? And in the physical fitness space, like everybody is judging you, right? I think everybody's judging you. That's what social media is in general, right? But yeah, like how have you learned to navigate that the past 3 to 4 years, where it's like, yeah, shutting your brain off, because it's literally you're posting something and you're being judged upon it, and it's not bad or good necessarily. Like most people, I remember somebody quoting, I can't remember who it was. I think it was a guy named Angus Bradley. He's like an Australian coach, yeah. He's like, social media is just glaze. Like, it's just people either being like cheering you on for whatever you do, and they're your tribe, or they're people just wanting to shit on you because they don't have anything better to do, right? But that's not normal human behavior, right? Like, it's not like being in a community that is like what we would consider like your actual tribe. So how have you learned to navigate those stressors? Because it's stressful. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, I really have to manage it. Like I have a brick for my phone so I can actually take away phone usage. I have to this has been a practice thing too. I have to actively shut myself down. I have to like go for walks without my phone, because it's like it's addicting. It's just straight up addicting, right? But how have you learned to manage it?
I have learned in part to manage just the time spent on social media instead of just posting stories throughout the day and being on there all the time. I will post usually all of my stories in like a 30-minute window at the time that I make a post. And those stories are either from that morning or the previous day, but it looks like it's all in the same day. So that I'm literally on there, I get my businessy stuff done, and then I'm off. I try not to scroll, but I also have trained my algorithm to give me dogs and fitness and PT,
Yeah.
so that's a lot better.
Yeah.
So I try.
I've unfortunately trained mine in the past like 3 weeks to give me a lot of political stuff, and like, don't get me wrong, but social media really is not a good place for that. I've noticed my anxiety and my general feelings of my body, like the body keeps the score. There's a lot of truth to that. But yeah, you gotta cultivate your feed in a way that's meaningful for you, and also realize like this is literally like a casino of like debt. Like it's terrible for you. It's just
Right.
sucks you in, right? So I like that it's dogs and stuff you like to see. That's good.
And I train it that way because I used to get a lot of more like political things, which is not inherently bad. Like we need to be informed, but social media is like the last good place that you should be looking for information in that regard. And so I cultivated mine to be more of a positive experience when I'm on there versus negative. And then when it comes to just the comments of people, I don't really have a good advice or good structure when it comes to how I approach that, other than just I've become so desensitized over the years of being on here all the time that my thought process is whatever this angry person is saying to me in my DMs, on my comments, isn't anything that I inherently did. It's more reflective of where they are in their mood and their life versus something that I'm doing. And so I've kind of just become more numb to it. And whenever I get one of those comments, instead of immediately going into fight or flight and trying to respond with a nasty comment or something that's more passive aggressive, which I used to do, mind you.
Oh yeah.
I just either ignore it, delete it, or if it's one that I think people can benefit from reading and it's going to actually have a meaningful answer to a question, then I will ask them a question for them to sort of extrapolate on kind of, or more further explain what they're trying to say so that I can understand where they're coming from before I'm immediately like in attack mode. And that takes practice and that takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes learning to step back and like not get them. I mean, because like what is social media at this current juncture? It's just emotionally triggered stuff over and over again. And it's so silly in like the fitness space, like, because I always just go back to like, okay, like 75% of Americans don't actually exercise consistently, right? Okay, so let's just start with that. Like, let's just get more people riding bikes, going to the gym in general. Like, let's make it, that this is universally good for us, right? But then, like, it's, just nuanced stuff that really, we're arguing. I'm coming up with a post in my brain, and it's a lot of things on social media are like high school boys, enormous claims with little evidence. You can take that however you will. But, like, it's that. It's just a bunch of, like, very things that are like, this will, like, creatine. Don't get me wrong, I take creatine. And it's probably the reason that people post about it is because it actually does have some evidence for it. But it's like, it's not going to change your life that much if you're not doing other stuff, right? And that a lot of stuff is like that. So when it comes to, this is kind of like, I want to shift away and just get more into Susie here. But I do want to, like, what are your themes for content? Like, what are the things that you're like, these are the things that I want to talk about and that seem to make a meaningful difference for the people I want to work with, I want to help?
Themes for my content are generally busting rehab and fitness myths. I am very well known for that. And doing it in a pretty direct way too, which some people do appreciate. Well, I will say most people appreciate, but then some people find it a little bit offensive, but I try to put as many disclaimers as I can. Mm-hmm. And then another big pillar is getting more women strength training because yes, only like 23% of people are meeting the recommended cardiovascular and resistance training recommendations for exercise in general. However, the ones that are meeting that when it comes to women specifically, we're often told like light weights, higher rep, Pilates, yoga, endless cardio. And those are the exact things that shift women into a group that predisposes them a lot more for metabolic disease, sarcopenia, and osteoporosis as they get older. And we wonder why so many women are having such crappy perimenopause and menopausal experiences. So that's a huge, huge passion of mine. And then I will say my last pillar is just kind of like having fun. I do post a lot of educational stuff, a lot of evidence-informed stuff, but I also show my personality a lot on social, and I think that's why a lot of people stick around. Like, I will share pretty in-depth stuff that I'm dealing with my own health, with my own fitness, along with, struggles that I've had when it comes to like being on social media in the past, or things that I've thought of in PT school, both personally and professionally, that are now different. And I think people really do appreciate that sort of raw side of connection with a creator, especially someone who is talking so much about evidence.
Yeah.
Because if all you do is, I know some creators do this and they do fine, but if all you do is ever just like shove research studies in people's face on social media, they're never going to be able to connect with you. And they're never going to be able to be like, oh, like this is a real human being person versus, oh, they're just someone who just shares a ton of PMID numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is like, it's not that evidence is not important. Evidence is very important. If anything, for refuting like claims that are just not helpful or are limiting, right? But like most of the evidence points for like more people need to be exercising. Like when it comes to pain and rehab, we're finding more and more that like general health is massive for how people do. Like metabolic, you're I think you're friends with Katie Dabrowski. Katie Dabrowski's out there just being like, yeah, your metabolic health like basically sets the primer for a lot of things. And it's we want to have these pieces of evidence, but like the people really nerding out on that are like other practitioners, right? Most of the people that I work with, I actually have a decent amount of like PTs on my roster at this point. Because PTs are just like everybody else. Like they need guidance, they need focus. I literally get on Instagram every day and I'm like, damn, that's a cool exercise. I should probably put that in my program.
Save it.
Yeah.
Have an endless folder of saved exercises.
Yeah, and you just see people who are like doing cool stuff, and it's like that's really powerful because it's like, yeah, like it's good to see other people like doing exercise, but it also just it invokes like comparison and like, oh, is my program not good enough? It's like most people's program, if they're actually executing it, is okay, right? Like, does it check some big boxes, and are you able to do it consistently, and then can we modify it, right? But I want to go back to, okay, I mentioned this before we went live here, before we went on the record, but it's like sometimes we post stuff and people be like offended because it's like, oh, this is like, you said it, I think a few months back, or it was a little bit ago, but like not every post is for you. Like you don't have to take these posts personal. Like where does that come from, and like why do people do that, and what do people need to understand about like consuming content that would just be helpful for their overall emotional regulation?
Absolutely. So I have a ton of chronic illnesses. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. I have long COVID. I have endometriosis. I have a ton of like gut infection, like SIBO, Candida stuff. So I am like queen of chronic illness. And this has all been over the past year that this has been, well, I got my EDS diagnosis back in 2022, and then long COVID started after COVID in 2020. But the whole endometriosis and actually diving into all this stuff started last year. And so I started sharing more about it because it completely altered my life, going down this rabbit hole of trying to quote unquote fix my own health. And so naturally I've been sharing more about it because a lot of people already knew that I was dealing with long COVID, POTS, and EDS. And so it's funny because the more I would share about it, either, some posts would be, hey, I'm really struggling. A lot of posts would be, hey, I'm struggling, and here are the things that I can still do. Mm-hmm. I would share, on paper, I shouldn't be able to do this, but here I am, like trying to do more or less elevation hikes with my husband over the summer. I'm trying to still show up for my training and do what I can. And it's funny that sharing those kinds of posts and those kinds of things did help some people be like, oh, there's hope. But then on the flip side of things, I was called ableist and toxic positivity. I was told that instilling hope in these populations is harmful, which is really funny because my team and I work with a lot of people in these realms, and most of them do really, really well with us, and we're able to get to a really good spot. So I'm like, I don't know who you're working with, but this is not the case.
Well, I mean, I just want to touch on that really quickly. This is going to sound like a dick, but like whenever I would ever interact with somebody, because I worked hospital-based care, I was a nursing assistant before I went to PT school. Me and my wife did like some travel therapy. But if people don't want to get better, things aren't going to get better. And like that sounds really mean, but our attitude, and it doesn't mean that this shit doesn't suck. Like it does. But I've been in a very low and depressive state, and frankly, one of the things that helped me was just the understanding that like, oh, neuroplasticity is a thing. Like my mind is not helping me if it is consistently orienting around negative stuff, right? And a lot of these things are just repeated. I'm a pretty pessimistic person. Like I've learned to be more optimistic, and it doesn't negate the fact that you have gone through a bunch of hard stuff. It just means like, do you handle it well enough to, get where you keep moving in the direction of where you want to go, right? But it's people. This is my current like ruminating thought. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Really, like no matter what. There's a great book called The Courage to be Disliked. 2 out of 10 people are going to hate you no matter what you do. 2 out of 10 people are going to love you. 6 out of the rest of the 6, they're just like, I don't care. Right? And that's the nature of a lot of things. And it's kind of hard to accept that because most PTs are like people pleasers. Right? So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like that's just my take.
No, that is exactly where I was going to be going with this, because I really do feel like when you're dealing, whether it's chronic illness, whether it's pain, whether it's injury, whether it's really, you can apply this to anything in life. If you do not want to get better, if you want to be stuck and only feed into that victim mentality, yes, there are some things that are going to be out of your control. And there's also a lot of stuff that is going to be in your control with time and dedication and patience and consistency and showing up that can improve. And those people that would show up on my page and be just super upset that I was sharing some sort of positivity or some sort of hope when it comes to these chronic illnesses, those are those types of people. And I originally was like, oh, like what can I say and do to change their mind? I can't say anything to change their mind. And so you kind of just have to be like, okay, these people are not ready to make active changes in their life, and try to sit with their feelings, know that their feelings are valid when it comes to this stuff, and still be able to do things to improve. And so that's kind of hard for a lot of people to see when they are scrolling social, no matter what you're scrolling it for, is if this specific piece of content does not relate 100% to your own experience, then immediately this person's wrong, their personal experience isn't valid, and they're just being toxic and harmful and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But there's this thing called the bean soup theory. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
So essentially, the bean soup theory is exactly what we're talking about. It started when a creator posted about making a recipe for bean soup. And people were like, this recipe sounds delicious. I'm going to make it this weekend. But there were other people who were saying, hey, I don't like beans. What else can I use for the bean soup? Or beans make me too gassy. I don't want to use beans. What can I replace? Or I don't have a slow cooker to make this bean soup. And people were getting angry at the creator when they were like, hey, I don't really have any other options for you. Like, if you don't like beans, don't make this recipe. And they were getting mad. So it's called the bean soup theory of if something does not perfectly align with someone's agenda, that they're going to get upset and angry with you, and there's nothing you can really do to change their mind about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at in a lot of ways with a lot of things. And I have hopefully learned to just like love those people if it's, because that's kind of what you're supposed to do. It's like, when I would see those people in person, one of the reasons that Strength and Kindness is my business name is because like a lot of people when I was on the neurosurgery, like they're in the hospital. These people have have had strokes. They've had brain injuries that they're not in their normal headspace. And frankly, if you go into the hospital and you're pretty much depressed, like immediately, right? Anxious immediately. And, there was the nurses that I really appreciated and loved to work with. They were just kind. Like, they weren't perfect. They realized that there had to be standards and rules and, like, boundaries. But, like, and I've also always just appreciated this with, like, good doctors. They just spend more time with people. Or they try to make people feel seen and understand, right? Or understood. And, like, I'm not that nice all the time. But kindness is not like niceness. It's like just being truthful, being supportive, and then just like letting the chips fall where they may. Because so many of these problems, we're also just in a state, and this has always been human nature. People have a self-serving bias, and that self-serving bias typically leads them to blame other people. When, yeah, other people are maybe contributing to your situation. The social determinants of health are a big piece of the health equation that we don't talk about enough in this country. But there's also personal responsibility. Sometimes you gotta pulling yourself out of your bootstraps, up by your bootstraps, if you have no support, it's not going to happen. But asking for help is often one of the most powerful things people can do, and frankly, we just don't do it. Right? We speak out, we complain, and we make excuses. Right? And again, human behavior. But are you actually asking for help? And then are you willing to like change your behavior, right? Which is really hard, again. So I appreciate your take on that. And this is the other thing. Women get shit on no matter what, right? Like, men get shit on. We should get shit on. But like, it's again, we going back to, but like women, like, it's like you can't do, if you start strength training, you're going to get bulky. If you, Pilates is a great activity. But as soon as you start selling somebody who loves Pilates, like, yeah, it's not strength training. Like, well, yeah, I'm getting stronger. It's like, nah, you probably haven't gotten stronger after, like, the first 6 weeks, like, to be honest. You maybe have gotten more coordinated. You have improved some of your general activity. And it doesn't mean it's not good for you. But it's still not progressive overload, per se. So what do you try to help educate people on when it comes to what true strength training is? How much they need of it, what does that look like? And then how to maybe fit these activities together. Because, again, I don't mind if you do Pilates like 3 times a week. That's cool. But like, it's not going to build bone after a certain point. It's not going to improve your cardiovascular fitness after a certain point. It's just a good activity that is fine, right?
And like speaking to, women getting kind of crapped on no matter what we do. As a woman who is highly educated and also on social media and also fun and silly and also traditionally in spaces where women quote unquote don't belong or in male dominated fields, it's always something. And usually 9 times out of 10, it's not all men, but it's always men when it comes to posting something that challenges someone's biases or being, nasty comments being left because I'm talking about something that's in a way more educated than what someone else on social media, usually the guys. I'm sorry. Guys, I love you, but some of you, not saying all of you, some of you just need a hug. You need to hug, and it's okay. And then also speaking to that, over the past, few years of really kind of posting about the importance of strength training, I've also been challenged by a lot of women on social media because I will talk about things like, hey, Pilates and yoga and walking and weighted vest walking are good modes of exercise for muscular endurance, flexibility, control in mid and end ranges, and general cardiovascular health. But they are not resistance training and they are not strength training. And women who are tied to their weighted vest and to their Pilates and to their yoga, they will get upset. And it is just really interesting on how people react when this isn't something that's my opinion. Like, this is documented in the literature, this is physiology, and it's funny how quickly people can get offended when they are so tied to a certain form of exercise to where they get so offended when someone's like, hey, this can be great, but it's not this. And so with kind of building on that, we know Pilates, yoga, walking, whatever is great. We know that the majority of Americans are not meeting the recommended exercise guidelines. And we still need to be doing some meaningful resistance training and strength training that has progressive overload built into it. And that literally looks like 2 days per week, having a program or a strength focused or resistance training focused day where you have 4 to 6 main exercises, not 12, not 10, but like 4 to 6 main exercises where you are working all the major movement patterns, working close enough to failure, meaning leaving like 2 to 3 reps in the tank of like an RPE 7 to 8, and then taking some darn rest breaks in between your sets, because women notoriously like to turn everything into a circuit, turn everything into a group fitness class. You need to actually be resting in order for your muscles to reproduce some of, reproduce some of the ATP so they can contract again. And then you need to be also doing them slower. We don't need to make everything into a burpee. And when I speak on like the failure and the getting close enough to muscular failure to actually make these adaptations, we need to be making that happen anywhere between 5 and 30 reps. However, especially for women, I like to keep it more in the 6 to 12, because odds are if you're doing Pilates, if you're doing group fitness classes, you're already hitting that upwards of like the 30 rep range, which is fine for endurance. But if we take every single exercise or every single set of every single exercise we do to 30 reps, like you're going to be in the gym for like 3 hours, even for a workout that has 4 to 6 exercises.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a few really good things. I'm just like, I'm looking back here. Like when you actually pull up a book like this and you're like, oh, it's clear that people really have never actually like looked into physiology. And like, I mean, I understand like 9 words of that book. I'm joking. That's like a Billy Madison quote. But anyway, it's like, you know, so much of the fitness space is like preferences. Like, this is the best. And it's like, yeah, but that's just what you like to do, right? And like, you know, I think one of the things I've gotten into in the past couple years is like sprinting, because frankly, like, it's fun. I strained my calf yesterday, which sucks, but like, you know, it happens, right? And that's part of the game is like, but what we do is we have our biases and then we're like, this is the way, right? And, you know, again, Pilates, great activity. Women doing things with a tribe, great, you know? But then these studios are like, yeah, we're doing strength now, and it's 5-pound weights or 10-pound weights for 45 reps, and it's like, yeah, that's good for like 2 weeks. And then there's diminishing returns with what the actual benefit of that is for you. And again, it doesn't have to be that much. We're not trying to throw a whole lot more on your plate. And like you said, like the 6 to 12 rep range where you're getting close enough to failure for it to actually be challenging. The other hard part, though, is everybody's freaking afraid to move. They're afraid that, like, oh, is my technique, or I've been told that my core is not functioning properly, or XYZ, right? And again, a lot of this stuff kind of applies. I mean, it applies to everybody. Like, so many people are afraid of how they move. But like, and again, I posted on TikTok like last week about just variability, and somebody basically said like they were agreeing with me like 90%. And they're like, the thing that Dave left out, and it was, I shouldn't mock that guy. But he's like, there's like a window of like productivity and variability, and like you can still get hurt if you exceed the capacity of the window. I'm like, well, that's just skill training. Like, that's the point of starting light and building up slowly, right? But what is it about like fear mongering and that type of stuff that, I mean, we know like it's just part of the human psyche, but how do you help people overcome it? What are your thoughts on it? And yeah, give me a little bit more of like the Susie way of navigating fear.
So I cannot stand fear mongering. It literally is the one thing that makes me want to go jump face first into the marsh behind my house, because it's just so unnecessary. And with so many people not exercising or doing actual resistance training, strength training, it just makes that barrier to entry so much higher than it needs to be. And especially when it comes to technique, people are like, oh, your technique needs to be perfect or else you're going to get an injury. Or if you got injured lifting, it's always because of your technique. And we can't say that, because most of the times when we have injury, it's not because of technique itself. It's because you did too much, too fast, too soon. in a position or in a range of motion that is new to you after not doing enough for too long. You're jumping into something entirely too quickly. And or you have a ton of other things going on in your life when it comes to sleep, nutrition, stress levels, job satisfaction that are just overflowing your cup and bubbling over and having this pain response. And so I feel like, especially when it comes to technique, you can pretty much train your body in any position and it will adapt to that over time if you do it slowly and grade up the exposure slowly enough over time. What happens is people getting into the gym and getting under load that is too heavy for them at that time and their body's not accustomed to it, and or starting in a program that's just really, really crappy that has a crap ton of volume, a ton of the same movement patterns, and a ton of the same stressors on different parts of the body after they haven't been strength training before. And so fear-mongering, I can't stand it. And it's very hard for me to be on socials and see some of this fear-mongering stuff and not just want to run to the comment section and just word vomit everything I have, which I guess that's another thing that I've changed about myself. Instead of doing that, I make a post about the post that quote-unquote triggered me without calling out the creator, because the call-out posts are not my jam.
I can't do it. I know it's probably be a good thing to get more of, like, I just can't do it.
I refuse.
Yeah.
I will just...
It's just one of those things. It's like, I don't want to start. I will call out the idea and I will talk, but I just don't want to. I don't want to necessarily. And people know, like the people in our spaces typically know like what we're talking about, right? You mentioned something really powerful there, and it's just, again, I think one of the things that I think me and you have learned, and you have to get better at this over time, is like what I used to do is like I used to blame a bad workout on my night of sleep, right? I used to blame an injury on like, I mean, even like straining my calf yesterday. It's like, did I not warm up long enough? And like that could be part of it. Also, like I have a cold right now. I have a 1-year-old. I traveled over the weekend. I went and it was kind of cold out when I started running. Like there's so many factors. And sometimes like I strained my calf like mildly, right? Shit happens. It sucks. I was frustrated. I also had like probably I'm 37. I had like the best squat workout I've probably had in like 2 years the day before. And sometimes it's just like you have a really good workout and you're like, yep, the next day is just kind of crumb. Like, and that's just the nature of this beast. If you train and you're trying hard enough, long enough, stuff's going to happen. I'm also just really bad at listening to myself.
Why are we the worst people to listen to it? Like, I don't listen to myself, and literally every other PT that I've met, they're like, oh yeah, I tell all my clients this stuff. We get such good results. And then I'm the one who just messes up my own training and performance. We suck.
I mean, because there's a desire. I think it's really, I've been ruminating on this again. It's like, okay, information is not knowledge. I have gotten way more patient as I've gotten older. I'm also exposing myself to like sprinting and stuff like that, which I stopped doing at 22 years old, right? And now I'm 15 years down the road, and like just that general capacity that I had as a kid, compounded with like, it's just frankly cognitive stressors are sneaky. Like all the things I'm thinking about, the things I'm getting through my day, and I don't feel that bad, but like I ruminate, I can feel fatigued, XYZ, and like it does have an effect on your body, right? And that's just like I don't have that many outlets anymore. So it's like, I want to go lift. I want to go play around. And that's like a form of meditation for me, right? And so when I like have something on the docket that's like supposed to be challenging, and I should just ride the bike for 30 minutes and call it good that day, I usually opt for the thing that's a little bit more challenging. Part of it too is when you're on social media, there is this desire to like, post what you're doing. I post my workouts, frankly, because I want to see, I just think people see that stuff and it allows them to be like, oh, this is normal. Like, maybe it's not normal, but like, oh, okay, that guy's doing this and he's not that special, right? Like, I'm not a guy squatting 700 pounds, so that's where I go with it.
And it's funny you bring up your calf strain, because I actually strained my lower back, 2 Saturdays ago? Because I had endo surgery back in November, and I haven't really been training at all since that because my central nervous system needed a freaking break. Yeah. And so I gave it that. So I started getting back into training with one of the PTs on my team, Claire, who is doing my training because I cannot be objective any longer. Yeah. And I was filming a post for a new block of the group strength training workout, and I was like, okay, I need to do conventional deadlift, which I have not done in 5 months. And I put 135 on the bar to warm up, felt good. So I'm like, okay, let me just look cool and like toss, 225s on each side, because I used to, deadlift in the 250s before all of this happened. And then 185 for 3 reps, I strained my back.
Yeah.
It wasn't because my form was bad. It wasn't because my programming was bad. It wasn't because deadlifts are bad for your back. It's just a matter of fact that my body was detrained. I have not been exposed to that load in that position for a long time. And my dumbass thought it was smart to just go and do it. And I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I wasn't fine. I mean, fast forward to today, I'm 100% back to, baseline. But it's just funny how, one, the things that we'll do for social sometimes, and then two, just again, all the common misbeliefs when it comes to injury. That was like the main driver of what strained my back. But then looking back, 2 days after, so that was on Saturday, on that Monday, I got sick. So whatever was brewing in me was probably present there. And then that Monday or Tuesday also started my menstrual cycle. So it's like all those compounded factors into one. It's like, oh yeah, makes sense.
That's a good segue into just the menstrual cycle, right? In women's training, this has become like, I mean, there's always grifters. There's always people wanting to tell you what you want to hear so that they can sell you something. And frankly, if you feel affected by your menstrual cycle when it comes to training, cool.
Adjust.
Yeah, that's auto-regulation. I want to just tell everybody, because I feel it. Auto-regulation just means self-regulation. And like, it's not that, it's just like, yeah, chill out a little bit. Or if you don't feel great, then back off. But again, I'm a man, so I don't want to mansplain stuff. I just did, I guess. But like, talk about, whether or not people should organize their training around the menstrual cycle. And I'm following Lauren Sis. I can't remember her full name, right? She's at putting out good content on like women's fitness and
she was just on Huberman podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
Huge. Yeah.
Anyway, but like, talk about that and maybe the things to be aware of, right? Because let's be honest, like, yeah, if you want to organize things and try to manage that, that's totally cool. Your menstrual cycle is a stressor, like, and that's a good. Most stressors are good, neither good nor bad. They're just stressors, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the handling of them that matters, right? So talk about that a little bit.
So cycle syncing in itself is basically saying that based on the phase of your cycle, you need to be changing your workouts. So the menstrual and the luteal phases should be quote unquote light yoga, walking, Pilates, gentle exercise. And then the follicular and the ovulation phases need to be heavier. Your HIIT training, your heavier strength training. But if we apply that to everyone, that's like 2 weeks out of the month where you're actually working towards adaptations with muscle, bone, cardiovascular adaptations. And so if we follow that for every menstruating woman out there, then you're literally never going to make progress, because you are taking off 2 weeks out of the month to do quote unquote gentle exercise because someone told you to do this because they're selling a program on it.
Yeah.
However, when we look at the evidence, which is actually one of Lauren's studies that she did, is that the influence of the menstrual cycle could be a factor in program design, along with a host of other factors like nutrition, fatigue, sleep quality, stress, injury, motivation, program enjoyment. All those things I just listed are like the foundation of what women should be focusing on, which, let's be honest, most women are underfueled anyways, because we've been told that we need to be small, skinny, and frail for the whole entire duration of our lives. And so that is the foundation that women need to be focusing on. A good program that they're following that has repeatability and progressive overload, sleep, nutrition, huge, as well as overall stress management. After all that is like done to a T, then that's when maybe I'm like, okay, maybe let's look at the menstrual cycle and how things are going. Because odds are, if you're focusing on those foundational things, the differences you feel within the menstrual cycle based on the phases are going to get better and or decrease, and you're not going to need to take those 2 weeks of time off throughout the cycle. Cycle syncing is just overcomplicating fitness, encouraging inconsistency, and it kind of strips women of empowerment of like, hey, I am a delicate, fragile flower because I am on my menstrual cycle or in my late luteal phase. Like, I should not be exercising because my body's going to internally combust.
Yeah.
And that's just not true.
Yeah.
And even when we look at like the menstrual phase across woman to woman, there's so many differences in the length of the days, the length of women's cycles, the time of ovulation, and even from like each woman's cycle to cycle, you're going to have differences.
Yeah.
So it's not that the data isn't there, it's that there's too much variability within women for us to definitively sit here and say everyone needs to cycle sync their workouts with their training. And that's when auto-regulation enters the chat. Do what you feel like is best for you, because odds are what you feel like is best for you may not be what the person next to you is. I'm a good one, for example. I usually hit all of my PRs during like the 1 or 2 days of first 1 to 2 days of my period. Like that's when I hit my PRs, which is when, according to cycle syncing, I'm supposed to be my weakest and my most fragile.
Yeah. It's Lauren Colenso Semple.
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Lauren. I wanted to get your name fully in there. She puts out really good content. Maybe I'll try to get her on this podcast in the not too distant future. She seems like she's awesome to talk to.
She's great.
And it's I think the one thing that's hard to convey, and why I just go back to, it's such a cliche, but like everybody is on their own journey, but the principles often will guide you pretty well. And then you have to figure out, and I mean, this doesn't mean that people like don't need a coach. They don't need a practitioner that can help. I mean, the best athletes in the world still have coaches, right? But ultimately, good coaches want people to make their own decisions inside of like the parameters that are going to lead to success, right? And there's just, I mean, you get it, I get it. Like people want straightforward answers. I talk to people, and I'm like, okay, let's like narrow it down, right? Even I had, one of my clients is like, I'm in like a check-in. It's like, I'm working on eating better. And I'm like, okay, great. What does better mean to you, right? And this is the game. This is the hard part about, well, and to her, it was just like more fruits and veggies, getting protein in more consistently. And I'm like, great, like that's sweet. Now that we have defined better for you, we can start to like implement specific things. And like, that's the game with all this stuff. It's like, oh, should I deadlift or should I trap bar deadlift? It's like, well, what are you doing this for? Why? And do you want to get good at barbell deadlifting? Because it's badass, and does it matter? Like, you should probably do both at some point in time. We just get so lost in like,
in the sauce.
There's a perfect path that I should be on. And frankly, because that helps us avoid struggle, right? Or it helps us think that we're going to get the outcome we want. But kind of the last big thing I want to ask you is just like, what are you continuing to pursue as you like train, as you navigate your own body? What helps you be optimistic in the face of like, let's be honest, like we're all going to get older. We're going to struggle with stuff. You have chronic illnesses that you're going to have to navigate for a long time. But like, what keeps you optimistic?
I think something that I've reframed over the past year, and I mean, when you listen back to the podcast, you'll kind of see it come out, is instead of saying things like, I am struggling so much, but I should also be training, I have changed to yes, but, and I've swapped that to yes, and. Because I think when you realize that two things that contradict each other can be true at the same time, that takes off a lot of pressure to only be one versus the other. And I think that's where people kind of get in a trap, because if you think that way and you get stuck in the negative mindset of my chronic illnesses, my injury, my pain, then that becomes your life. But if you get stuck in only looking at the positives, then you're kind of bulldozing your emotions and your feelings, and that's where you can get stuck when it comes to more like mental health things. But I think most people don't realize two things can exist at once. You can be struggling with chronic illness, pain, injury, and still trying to find enjoyment in training and enjoyment in everyday life. Those two things existing at the same time was a huge mental shift that I made that not only influenced my own training and my own health, but also like other areas of life too, like my business, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my niece and my nephew. And changing just to yes and can make such a huge difference when you're navigating literally just life in general.
Yeah. It's honestly funny because I think physical training has taught me that, the more I have shifted away. Like, I got into training because, frankly, my first experiences in the gym, I just were anxiety induced. I wasn't very good at moving, XYZ. Then I got into like CrossFit. I found I loved doing stuff that was hard. It was part of my identity. I could run, I could do these things. But the more I've just like, and you know, sometimes you need a little bit of David Goggins. Sometimes a lot of times you don't necessarily. And especially if you're, this is just a part of your life that you care about and you enjoy and you want to improve, that's really great. But it's also like not the only thing, right? And it is that everybody has these stories. Like, everybody. I see people 3 times a week, probably more. It's like, it's just, you know, my life, everything went to shit, and I didn't feel right in my own body, and, you know, I found some solace in, like, I could keep going, right? And again, I think there's some people that's like they go down these rabbit holes of looking for perfect solution, and I just don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's like making the best with what you have over and over again, right? And like that's an and type of thing, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. I also think another huge thing too is realizing that even though you're in a place where you're struggling more or you're having more difficulty with health, illness, relationships, business, job, whatever, learn how to still find the joy in celebrating people in your life who are in better places than you.
Yeah.
I have so many friends because all of my friends live all over the country from social media. Yay.
Yeah.
And Alyssa Olenik's one of them. Like, she is smashing it right now with her own training and her business. And she's doing this really cool thing this year that I can't talk about yet because she hasn't released it. And me sitting here at one of the lowest points in my own personal training fitness, like old Susie would have sat and looked at Alyssa and had a lot of just comparison and negative energies toward her because look how well she's doing when I'm not doing well. But the more you can kind of sit with where you're at and then also, you know, hype up your friends and your family members and the people that are doing so well, the more you're almost at peace with what you're going through because you can see what things can become. It's just not your time right now, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's a really important and good point. It's like, just cheer people on. Like, other people's success doesn't mean that you can't be successful. It's a weird immature way of, and I've been there and I still struggle with it sometimes. And it's like, I think it's because frankly my ego is still fragile and I want to be loved and accepted and all these things, right? But like, again, social media also isn't real. Like, you know, I'm grateful that I have a following that's allowed me to have a business that I really do enjoy what I do about 75% of the time. 25% of the time is like, this is still work and I'm kicking the crap out of myself. But it's not like I don't want to be like loved for stuff that I do on social media. I just want to be real, right? That goes a long way too. And then just like, one of the things I think our generation, the social media, and we have to realize, like, life is about other people. Like, the more you can like help other people, the more you can, you know, whether that be your own family, people in your community, people in your work. Like, I just always go back to this. I was getting gas on Sunday, and like me and the gas station attendant were talking back and forth, and I was just like, that guy's day is astronomically better than the other guy who was just, all right, like, not being a human. And I think that's what a lot of this stuff boils down to, is just like, and I don't want to say just have a like positive mental attitude all the time, but like, the more you just lean into that, the better things get, right?
Just make it fun. Like, make life fun. Even in the lowest training and health that I've been in the past year, like, I dress up as the Lorax and I show up on social media. Yeah. I still, you know, smile at people when I am at the grocery store or getting gas. I call my niece and my nephew. I, you know, hype up my friends who are doing well. It's like, the more you can just have fun with stuff, it takes off so much pressure off of your shoulders in every aspect of life, even if you are in a place where you are struggling more than you have been.
Yeah. That's a really good point. That's a good point to end on. I really appreciate you, Susie. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you, Susie?
So they can find me on Instagram and YouTube at dr.susie.squats. I post all the fun and educational stuff on Instagram, and then my YouTube is actually a free exercise library for coaches, clinicians, gen pop, gym lifters, whatever. And then my website is www.moveyourbonespt.com. And that's where I have the application to work with me and my team one-on-one, my group strength training program, and like 6 different freebies on my website if you want to snag those. There is one on cycle syncing, as well as navigating injury, RPE, posterior pelvic floor, and a couple more that are on there. So, yeah.
Super cool. Yeah, we could have kept talking. I try to keep these to like 60-ish minutes because like I don't want to do I would do the 3-hour long, but I don't feel like that's my thing right now.
I can always come back another time. It's fine.
Appreciate it, Susie. Thank you so much. Everybody go check out all those links you just mentioned, and thanks so much for being here, everybody. Peace.
Bye.